Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about how to implement any feature in your game with Godot 4. I want you to learn the concepts and the mindset required to do it yourself. The first thing I want to talk about is the Godot documentation. And I know this sounds cliche, but hear me out. Learning how to use and navigate the documentation is, in my opinion, the best skill you can have as a game dev. You can answer most of your questions about a node or anything else in Godot with the documentation alone. And if the documentation is not enough to help you, here's how I usually go about it. The first place I look is the documentation. The second place is Google. That usually redirects me to the forums, Reddit, or Stack Overflow. The last resource is tutorials. If I started from the tutorials, I could have got my answer sooner, but I would not have learned as much about the subject as I did by starting from the documentation. Tutorials tend to be very specific on a topic and usually focus on the usable part of things and not the internals. So please do yourself a favor and read the documentation first. Now, let's talk about the practical part of implementing any feature. And the most important thing here is to know exactly what you want with the feature. There must be no doubt here. If you want to implement a feature, you must know what it is and what it does. For example, in the video I have playing here, I wanted to implement resource gathering for my game. I wanted to highlight the resource, allow the player to beat the shit out of it, and destroy it in order to spawn a collectible piece. There is no doubt in my mind of what the feature is and what it does. Now, to implement it, I divided it into small and measurable steps, starting only with highlighting the resource when the player is near. Then, allow the player to beat it. Then, allow the resource to be destroyed, and finally spawn the collectible piece. These are all steps that I can Google and are more likely to give me a meaningful answer. If I try to Google how to implement resource gathering in Godot 4 top-down RPG, I will probably get an answer, but maybe we'll be missing the beating part. Maybe the collectible piece doesn't exist in that implementation, or maybe the example, I don't know, have an inventory that my game doesn't. By doing small measurable steps, one at a time, you will develop your game dev brain. And in the future, you will be able to come up with some creative solutions for your problems, even before going through the documentation or Google. Another thing I want to mention is the fact that when doing this approach, you should strip all the polish out of the feature, unless it is a core part of it. For example, in my case, I want to do an animated highlight, but this will take an extra step. And at this point, I don't know if my feature is any fun. I don't know if the feature will fit well with the rest of the game. And I don't know if it's engaging. If I polish this now and it turns out the feature sucks, this is just extra work I will scrap. Build the feature without the polish. Test it. If it is what you expected it to be, polish it. The last thing I will talk about is the I must make reusable components mindset. Listen, yes, you should try to make good code. And yes, you should try to make reusable components. But there is a time for it. If you are trying to implement something you never did before, it's hard to abstract into the reusable level. In my example, I implemented the resource gathering for wood only. But I will have different resources. I will have a mine, I will have ships in the future, but my base implementation is specific for the wood resource. And when I move into the others, I will step back and analyze what I can reuse from this implementation and what I can't. then I will abstract the implementation. You can abstract from the start if you already implemented this and you know what is reusable and what is not. Please don't get trapped into the abstraction hell. There is no perfect code, there is no perfect implementation. Don't overscope your feature. You know what is more important than highly reusable nodes? Finishing and shipping your game. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Bye.